The glass towers of downtown Chicago glowed against the October night sky, their sharp edges cutting through the cold air like blades. Inside the 43rd floor of Rowe Industries headquarters, the silence was heavy, thick with the kind of dread that comes before a collapse. Ethan Rowe stood alone in the conference room, his reflection staring back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows. At 34, he was one of the youngest billionaires in the country. His face had graced the covers of Forbes, Fortune, and Bloomberg Businessweek. Wall Street called him a genius, his competitors called him ruthless. His employees called him terrifying. Tonight he just looked exhausted. The spreadsheet on the screen in front of him blurred as he rubbed his eyes. Numbers. Endless columns of numbers that made no sense anymore. Revenue projections. Quarterly reports. Cash flow statements. Everything pointed to the same devastating conclusion. By tomorrow morning, Rowe Industries would be exposed. The fraud buried deep in the books would surface. Investors would flee. The board would demand his resignation. The empire he'd built from nothing would crumble in less than 24 hours. And he had no idea how to stop it. Ethan's phone buzzed on the mahogany table. Another message from his CFO, Richard Caldwell. "We need to talk. Now." He ignored it. Richard had been panicking for weeks, throwing around accusations, demanding audits, threatening to go public. The man was loyal, but loyalty didn't solve problems. Ethan needed answers, not hysteria. He scrolled through the files again, searching for the loophole his legal team swore didn't exist. His jaw tightened. Someone had been siphoning funds for months, maybe years. Small amounts at first, then larger transfers disguised as operational costs. Whoever did this knew the system inside and out. They knew how to cover their tracks, and they knew Ethan would take the fall. The worst part? He couldn't prove his innocence. Not without evidence. Not without time. And time had just run out. The soft hum of a vacuum cleaner broke the silence. Ethan glanced toward the doorway and saw her, the maid. She moved quietly through the executive lounge just beyond the glass partition, pushing a cleaning cart with practiced efficiency. He'd seen her before, of course. Every night for the past year she'd been there, invisible in her navy blue uniform, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, her eyes always lowered. He didn't know her name, didn't care to. She was part of the furniture, background noise, another faceless employee in a company that employed thousands. But tonight, something was different. Maybe it was the way she paused near the doorway, her hand gripping the handle of the vacuum cleaner a little too tightly. Or maybe it was the way her gaze flickered toward him, just for a second, before she looked away again. Ethan turned back to the screen, dismissing the distraction. He didn't have time for curiosity. He didn't have time for anything except survival. The maid stepped into the conference room. "I'm sorry, sir," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I can come back later." Ethan didn't look up. "Just do what you need to do." She nodded and moved to the far corner of the room, wiping down the sideboard where coffee cups and water bottles had accumulated throughout the day. Her movements were careful, deliberate, as if she were afraid of making too much noise. Ethan's phone buzzed again. This time it was his head of legal, Sharon Winters. "Ethan, we're out of options. If you don't have a solution by 8 a.m., I'm advising the board to distance themselves from you." His chest tightened. Sharon had been his mentor once. She'd believed in him when no one else did, and now she was preparing to abandon ship. He slammed the laptop shut and leaned back in his chair, his fingers pressed against his temples. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not after everything he'd sacrificed. "Excuse me, sir." The maid's voice cut through the fog in his mind. He looked up sharply, irritation flashing across his face. "What?" She hesitated, her hands clasped in front of her. I couldn't help but notice the screen before you closed it." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "You were looking at my computer?" "No, sir. I mean, yes, but not on purpose. I saw the numbers." He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You saw confidential financial data. Do you understand how serious that is?" The maid flinched but didn't step back. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overstep. It's just, there's something wrong with those numbers." Ethan stared at her, disbelief mixing with anger. "Something wrong? You're a maid. What would you know about financial data? If stories like this one move you, stories about unexpected heroes, hidden brilliance, and justice served, don't miss a single episode. Hit that subscribe button and join us for more powerful stories every day. You won't regret it." The woman didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously. When she finally spoke, her voice was even quieter than before. I noticed a pattern, sir, in the way the transfers were coded. They're disguised as vendor payments, but the timestamps don't match the invoice dates and the account numbers. They're cycling. Every third transaction uses a different routing number, but they all lead back to the same offshore shell company. Ethan froze. The room seemed to tilt slightly, the air growing thinner. He stared at the woman in front of him, this shy, unassuming maid who'd just described a money laundering scheme with more clarity than his entire forensic accounting team. How? His voice came out hoarse. How do you know that? She met his eyes for the first time, and in that moment Ethan saw something he hadn't noticed before. Intelligence. Sharp, calculating, undeniable intelligence. Because I've been watching, sir, she said quietly. For a long time. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He opened the laptop again, pulling up the spreadsheet. His hands were shaking now, but not from fear, from something else. Something he couldn't name yet. Show me, he said. The maid stepped closer, her movements hesitant but purposeful. She pointed to a column on the screen. There, transaction 4471. It's listed as a payment to Summit Logistics, but Summit Logistics doesn't exist. The address is fake. The EIN is registered to a dissolved corporation in Delaware. Ethan scrolled through the data, his pulse quickening. She was right. Every word she said was right. And here, she continued, pointing to another row, this transfer to Cascade Solutions. The amount matches a legitimate vendor payment, but the date is off by 2 weeks. Someone backfilled the entry to make it look routine. Ethan's mind raced. This was it. This was the evidence he needed. But how had she seen it? How had she known? Who are you? He asked, his voice low and intense. The maid stepped back, her expression closing off again. Just someone who cleans floors, sir. No. Ethan shook his head. No, you're not. You just uncovered a fraud scheme that's been buried for over a year. My entire financial team missed this. My auditors missed this, but you... He gestured toward her, his frustration bubbling to the surface. You spotted it in 30 seconds. She didn't respond. Ethan took a breath, forcing himself to calm down. What's your name? Maya, she said quietly. Maya Lawson. Maya. He repeated the name as if testing its weight. How long have you worked here? 2 years, sir. And you've been... watching this whole time? Maya hesitated, then nodded. I see a lot of things, sir. People don't notice me, so I notice them. Ethan didn't know what to say. His entire world had just shifted on its axis, and the woman responsible was standing in front of him in a cleaning uniform, looking like she wanted to disappear, but she wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. Maya, he said, his voice firm now. I need your help. She looked up at him, surprise flickering across her face. I need you to show me everything you've seen, Ethan continued. Every discrepancy, every pattern, every mistake. Because if what you're saying is true, then someone on my team is stealing from me, and I need to know who. Maya's eyes widened. Sir, I don't care what your job title is, Ethan interrupted. Right now, you're the only person in this building who seems to understand what's happening, so please, help me. For a long moment, Maya said nothing. Then slowly, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. I'll help you. Ethan exhaled, relief flooding through him. He didn't know who this woman was or why she'd been hiding her intelligence behind a mop and a vacuum cleaner. But right now, she was the only thing standing between him and total ruin, and he wasn't going to let her go. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. Ethan pulled out a chair at the conference table and gestured for Maya to sit. She hesitated, her eyes darting toward the door as if calculating an escape route. For a moment, he thought she might bolt, just disappear back into the shadows where she'd spent the last 2 years observing his empire from the margins. Please, he said, softer this time. Sit. Maya slowly lowered herself into the chair, her posture rigid, hands folded in her lap. She looked profoundly uncomfortable, like someone who'd just been asked to sit at a table where she didn't belong. Ethan noticed the way her shoulders hunched slightly forward, the protective instinct of someone who'd learned to make herself small. He sat across from her and opened the laptop, turning the screen so they could both see it. The spreadsheet glowed in the dim light of the conference room, rows and columns of financial data stretching endlessly downward. Show me everything, Ethan said. Start from the beginning. Maya's fingers trembled slightly as she leaned forward. She didn't touch the keyboard, just pointed at the screen, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. It started about 18 months ago, she began. I noticed it by accident. I was cleaning Mr. Caldwell's office one night and he'd left some papers on his desk. invoice reconciliations. Nothing unusual except one of the vendor names caught my eye. Why? Ethan asked. Because I'd seen it before, Maya said, on a payment authorization form in the finance department, but the amounts didn't match. One invoice said $12,000. The authorization said $15,000. It was only a $3,000 difference, so I figured it was a clerical error. Ethan nodded slowly. But it wasn't. No, sir. Maya scrolled through the spreadsheet, her movements surprisingly confident now that she was focused on the data. 2 weeks later, I saw another discrepancy. Different vendor, same pattern. Small overpayments that added up over time. I started paying attention after that, watching for patterns. She highlighted a series of transactions, her finger tracing the timeline. Look here. Every third Friday, there's a payment to one of 5 shell companies. The amounts vary, but they're always just under the threshold that would trigger an automatic audit flag, usually between $8,000 and $12,000. Ethan's jaw tightened. Someone had planned this meticulously. They knew the company's internal controls, knew exactly how much they could steal without raising red flags. These companies, he said, pointing at the vendor names. Summit Logistics, Cascade Solutions, Pinnacle Consulting. They're all fake? Most of them, yes, Maya confirmed. I looked them up during my breaks. Public records show they're registered to P.O. boxes or dissolved addresses. A few have websites, but they're templates. Stock photos, generic descriptions, no real employees. No actual services rendered. Ethan felt a cold fury building in his chest. How much? Total? Maya pulled up another tab. A spreadsheet she'd apparently created herself. Color-coded and organized with professional precision. Based on what I could track from the documents I've seen over the past 18 months, I estimate somewhere between $8 million. The number hit Ethan like a physical blow. Nearly $3 million. Stolen right under his nose while he'd been too busy playing the role of a visionary CEO to notice his own house was being robbed from the inside. Who? The word came out sharper than he intended. Who's behind this? Maya's expression shifted. Uncertainty replacing the confidence she'd shown while discussing the numbers. I don't know for certain, sir, but I have suspicions. Tell me. She hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands again. Sir, I'm just a maid. If I'm wrong, Maya. Ethan leaned forward, his voice firm but not unkind. I need to know what you think. Right now, your judgment is worth more to me than anyone else's in this building. She looked up at him, searching his face as if trying to determine whether he meant it. Whatever she saw there must have convinced her, because she took a breath and spoke. The payments are authorized through the finance department, but they're coded as operational expenses, which means they bypass the normal vendor verification process. Only 3 people have the access level to code transactions that way without secondary approval. Who? Ethan demanded. Richard Caldwell, your CFO, Sharon Winters, your head of legal, and Marcus Trent, your VP of operations. The names landed like stones in Ethan's stomach. Richard, Sharon, and Marcus. 3 people he trusted. 3 people who'd been with him since the early days, when Rowe Industries was just an idea and a loan. It can't be all 3, Ethan said, more to himself than to Maya. That would require coordination. A conspiracy. Not necessarily, sir, Maya said carefully. It could be one person using the other's credentials. If someone had access to their login information, they could authorize payments under any of those 3 names without the others knowing. Ethan's mind raced. He thought about Richard's panicked messages over the past few weeks, Sharon's sudden coldness, Marcus's increasing absences from meetings. Were they guilty? Or were they victims too, scrambling to understand why the company's finances were suddenly falling apart? There's something else, Maya said quietly. Ethan looked at her. What? She navigated to another section of the spreadsheet, pulling up a series of email timestamps. Whoever's doing this has been accessing the system late at night, between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. usually. That's outside normal business hours, which suggests they're trying to avoid detection. Can you tell which account was used? Maya shook her head. Not from the payment records alone, but if you could access the server logs, you could see which credentials were active during those times. Ethan grabbed his phone and pulled up his IT director's contact. Then he stopped, his finger hovering over the call button. Who could he trust? If one of his senior executives was behind this, they'd have allies. People who'd help cover their tracks or tip them off if Ethan started digging too deeply. He couldn't just storm into IT and demand access logs without risking that the evidence would disappear before he could secure it. He needed to be smart. Surgical. He looked at Maya. Do you have access to the building's security system? She blinked. No, sir. Why would I? Because the cleaning staff has keycard access to almost every floor, and security cameras record who enters and exits each department. Ethan stood, pacing now, his mind working through the problem. If someone's been logging into the system late at night, they'd have to physically be in the building to do it. We can cross-reference the payment timestamps with security footage and see who was here when the fraudulent transactions were authorized. Maya's eyes widened. Sir, accessing security footage requires executive clearance. I have clearance, Ethan interrupted. But I need your help navigating the timeline. You know, when the payments were made, I'll pull the footage. He grabbed his laptop and opened the security system interface, entering his admin credentials. The dashboard loaded, displaying a grid of camera feeds from across the building. Maya stood and moved to his side, her earlier hesitation replaced by focused intensity. Start with October 3rd, she said. That's when one of the largest payments was authorized, $15,000 to Summit Logistics. Ethan pulled up the date and scrolled through the camera feeds. The 43rd floor was mostly dark, just a few scattered lights in the hallways. He fast-forwarded through the footage, watching time-stamped figures move through the frame. 11:43 p.m. A custodian pushed a cart down the corridor. 12:07 a.m. Another cleaner exited an office. 12:22 a.m. A figure appeared on the executive floor, moving purposefully toward the finance department. Ethan paused the video and zoomed in. The figure was wearing a dark suit, their face partially obscured by the angle of the camera. But as they turned toward the keypad outside Richard Caldwell's office, the overhead light caught their features. Ethan's blood ran cold. Marcus, he breathed. Marcus Trent, his VP of operations. The man he'd promoted 3 years ago after Marcus had saved a critical client deal. The man he'd trusted with operational oversight of half the company. Maya leaned closer, studying the screen. Are you sure? Ethan nodded slowly. That's his profile, his build. And look, he pointed to the man's wrist. That's his watch. I gave it to him for his 40th birthday. They watched as Marcus entered the finance office, disappearing from view. The timestamp read 12:24 a.m. The fraudulent payment to Summit Logistics had been authorized at 12:31 a.m. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. That bastard. Maya said nothing, but he could feel her tension beside him, the shared understanding that they'd just uncovered something dangerous. Pull up the other dates, Ethan said quietly. Every payment timestamp Maya gave us. I want to see if Marcus shows up in all of them. They spent the next hour combing through security footage, and the pattern was undeniable. Marcus Trent appeared on the executive floor during off hours on at least 9 occasions over the past year, each time correlating with a fraudulent payment authorization. But here's what made Ethan's stomach turn. Marcus wasn't alone. On 3 separate occasions, someone else appeared in the footage. Someone entering Marcus's office late at night. Someone whose presence on the executive floor after midnight made no sense. Ethan froze the frame and stared at the screen. Sharon Winters, his head of legal, his mentor, the woman who'd taught him half of what he knew about corporate governance. She was walking into Marcus's office at 1:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in July, carrying a manila folder. Maya exhaled slowly beside him. Sir, I see it, Ethan said, his voice hollow. They weren't just dealing with one corrupt executive. They were dealing with 2. And if Sharon was involved, that meant the conspiracy went deeper than theft. It meant legal protections had been dismantled. Safeguards had been removed. Someone had been systematically engineering the company's collapse from the inside, and Ethan had been too blind to see it. He closed the laptop and stood, his mind reeling. We need to move fast. If Marcus or Sharon suspects we're onto them, they'll destroy the evidence. Wipe the servers. Disappear before we can prove anything. Maya nodded. What do you want me to do? Ethan looked at her, really looked at her this time. This quiet woman in a cleaning uniform who'd just saved his company, who'd seen what no one else had seen, who'd risked everything by stepping out of the shadows to help him. I need you to stay close, he said. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for 8 a.m. tomorrow. I'm going to expose Marcus and Sharon in front of everyone. But until then, I need you to keep watching. If either of them tries to access the building tonight, I need to know. Maya's eyes widened. Sir, I don't think... Please, Ethan said. I can't do this alone. And right now, you're the only person I trust. For a long moment, Maya just stared at him. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. I'll help you. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Gratitude, relief, and something else he couldn't quite name. "Thank you," he said quietly. Maya picked up her cleaning cart and moved toward the door. But before she left, she turned back one last time. "Mr. Rowe," she said softly, "be careful. People like Marcus and Sharon, they don't go down easy." Ethan met her gaze. "Neither do I." Maya nodded once, then disappeared into the hallway. And Ethan Rowe stood alone in the conference room, staring at the city lights below, knowing that the war for his company had just begun. The sky over Chicago was still dark when Ethan left the building at 3:47 a.m. The streets were empty except for a few taxis and delivery trucks making their early morning rounds. The cold October wind bit at his face as he walked to his car, but he barely felt it. His mind was too crowded with strategy, contingencies, and the bitter taste of betrayal. Marcus and Sharon, two people he'd trusted with everything, two people who'd been systematically dismantling his company while smiling to his face in boardroom meetings. Ethan slid into his black Audi and sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. He needed sleep. He needed clarity. But most of all, he needed a plan that wouldn't fall apart the moment Marcus or Sharon realized they'd been caught. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Just finished the West Wing. Building is clear. No sign of MT or SW tonight. MT Marcus Trent, SW Sharon Winters." She was using initials to avoid leaving a digital trail. Smart. Ethan texted back. "Good. Go home. Get some rest. I'll see you at the board meeting." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Sir, I can't attend the board meeting. I'm not authorized." Ethan's jaw tightened. Of course she wasn't authorized, she was a maid. In the eyes of everyone at Rowe Industries, Maya Lawson was invisible, someone who emptied trash cans and wiped down conference tables. The idea of her sitting in a boardroom while executives decided the fate of a billion-dollar company would be laughable to them, but not to Ethan. Not anymore. He typed quickly. "You'll be there. As my guest. I'll clear it with security." A long pause. Then, "Are you sure, sir?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Yes. You're the only reason I have a case. You deserve to see this through." Another pause, then, "Thank you, Mr. Rowe." Ethan pocketed his phone and started the engine. He had 4 hours until the meeting. 4 hours to gather evidence, brief his remaining allies, and prepare for the fight of his life. He drove through the empty streets toward his penthouse in the Gold Coast, his mind racing. The security footage was damning, but it wasn't enough. Marcus could claim he was working late. Sharon could argue she was consulting with him on a legal matter. Without concrete evidence linking them to the shell companies and the stolen funds, they could lawyer their way out of this. He needed more. He needed the smoking gun. By the time Ethan reached his apartment, the sky was beginning to lighten, a pale gray glow creeping over Lake Michigan. He made himself a pot of black coffee and sat at his home office desk, pulling up every file Maya had flagged. The shell companies, the payment authorizations, the timestamps. He cross-referenced them with employee access logs, vendor contracts, and bank routing numbers. The deeper he dug, the clearer the picture became. Marcus had been clever. He'd created the fake vendors using untraceable P.O. boxes and offshore accounts. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd used the same bank in the Cayman Islands for all 5 shell companies, and that bank had filed a suspicious activity report with the U.S. Treasury Department 6 months ago, a report that had been buried in regulatory paperwork and never escalated to Rowe Industries' compliance team. Ethan pulled the SAR using his executive access to the company's legal database. There it was, in black and white. Multiple transactions from Rowe Industries accounts to entities controlled by a single beneficial owner. The owner's name was listed as M. Trent Holdings, LLC. Marcus hadn't even bothered to hide his initials. Ethan sat back in his chair, a grim smile crossing his face. Got you. But what about Sharon? Her role was murkier. The security footage showed her meeting with Marcus, but that alone wasn't proof of conspiracy. She could claim ignorance. She could say Marcus had misled her, unless Ethan could prove she'd knowingly helped him cover it up. He opened Sharon's email archive, another privilege of his executive access, and started searching. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for. An email thread from 8 months ago between Sharon and Marcus, discussing operational restructuring. The language was vague, full of corporate euphemisms, but buried in the attachments was a legal memo Sharon had drafted, outlining how to reclassify certain vendor payments to avoid triggering audit protocols. She'd literally written the playbook for the fraud. Ethan's phone rang, shattering the silence of his apartment. He glanced at the screen. Richard Caldwell. He answered. Richard. Ethan, thank God. Richard's voice was strained, exhausted. I've been trying to reach you all night. We need to talk before the board meeting. There's something you need to know. Ethan's pulse quickened. I'm listening. It's about the financials. I've been going through the audit reports and I found discrepancies. Someone's been authorizing payments under my credentials, but I swear to you, Ethan, it wasn't me. I think, Richard's voice dropped to a whisper, I think someone's framing me. Ethan closed his eyes. Richard didn't know. He was a victim too, just like Ethan had suspected. I know, Ethan said quietly. I know it wasn't you. Silence on the other end. Then, you know, how? I'll explain at the meeting. But Richard, I need you to do something for me. Don't tell anyone we spoke. Not Marcus. Not Sharon. No one. Just show up at 8 a.m. and follow my lead. Ethan, what's going on? Trust me. Please. Another pause. Then Richard exhaled shakily. Okay. I trust you. Ethan hung up and checked the time. 6:23 a.m. Less than 2 hours until the meeting. He needed to move. He showered quickly, dressed in his sharpest charcoal suit, and assembled the evidence into a presentation file. Security footage, financial records, the SAR, Sharon's memo. Everything organized into a narrative that would be impossible to refute. At 7:30 a.m., Ethan arrived back at Rowe Industries. The building was starting to come alive. Early morning staff filing through the lobby, elevators humming as employees headed to their floors. Ethan bypassed the main entrance and used his private elevator to the 43rd floor. The boardroom was on the east side of the building, a massive space with a glass table that could seat 20. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Chicago skyline, the morning sun casting long shadows across the room. Ethan entered and found the AV tech setting up the presentation system. Morning, Mr. Rowe. You need anything special today? Yeah, Ethan said. Make sure the screen recording function is active. I want everything that happens in this meeting documented. The tech nodded. You got it. Ethan positioned his laptop at the head of the table and pulled up his presentation. His hands were steady, but his heart was pounding. This was it. The moment that would either save his company or destroy what little remained of it. At 7:52 a.m., the board members began arriving. Lawrence Pemberton, the silver-haired chairman of the board. Diane Wu, the sharp-eyed venture capitalist who'd backed Ethan's first round of funding. Gregory Hollis, the former CEO of a Fortune 500 company who served as an advisor. 5 other board members, all influential, all powerful. Richard Caldwell entered looking pale and anxious. He gave Ethan a tight nod and took his seat. At 7:58 a.m., Marcus Trent walked in, his expression calm and confident. He was wearing a navy suit and his signature Rolex, the one Ethan had given him. He smiled at Ethan as he sat down. Morning, boss. Ready to put out some fires? Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. Something like that. At 7:59 a.m., Sharon Winters arrived. She looked tired, her usual polished demeanor slightly frayed. She set her leather briefcase on the table and glanced at Ethan. This better be important, Ethan. I had to cancel 3 client meetings for this. It is, Ethan said evenly. Trust me. At exactly 8 a.m., the boardroom door opened one last time, and Maya Lawson walked in. Every head in the room turned. The board members stared at her confused. Marcus's smile faltered. Sharon's eyes narrowed. Maya was still wearing her cleaning uniform, the navy blue polo shirt and black pants. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, but she walked into that room with her head held high, her expression calm and resolute. Lawrence Pemberton frowned. Ethan, what is this? Why is a janitor in our board meeting? Because she's the reason we're having this meeting, Ethan said firmly. He gestured to the empty chair beside him. Maya, please sit. Maya hesitated for only a second, then took the seat. Marcus leaned forward, his voice tight. Ethan, I don't know what you're playing at, but this is highly inappropriate. We're about to discuss sensitive financial matters. She doesn't have clearance. She has my clearance, Ethan interrupted. And she knows more about the sensitive financial matters of this company than anyone else in this room. Sharon's face had gone pale. Ethan, what are you talking about? Ethan stood and activated the presentation screen. The first slide appeared, a title card that read, Internal Fraud Investigation, October 2024. The room went silent. Over the past 18 months, Ethan began, his voice steady and cold. Rowe Industries has lost approximately $7 million to fraudulent vendor payments. These payments were authorized by senior executives using shell companies and offshore accounts. The fraud was sophisticated, deliberate, and designed to avoid detection. Gregory Hollis sat forward. Ethan, are you saying? I'm saying that two people in this room orchestrated a systematic theft from this company, Ethan said. And I have proof. He clicked to the next slide. The security footage of Marcus entering the finance office at 12:24 a.m. appeared on the screen. Timestamp clearly visible. Marcus's face drained of color. This is Marcus Trent, Ethan continued, accessing the finance department after midnight to authorize a fraudulent payment to Summit Logistics, a shell company that doesn't exist. This is one of 9 separate occasions where Marcus was documented on security footage during times that correspond exactly with fraudulent transactions. He clicked again. Sharon's image appeared, walking into Marcus's office with a folder. And this is Sharon Winters meeting with Marcus during off hours to discuss. Ethan pulled up the email thread, projecting it onto the screen. How to reclassify vendor payments to avoid audit protocols. A legal memo she personally drafted to facilitate the fraud. Sharon stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. Ethan, I was consulting with Marcus on legitimate operational matters. You're twisting. Am I? Ethan pulled up the suspicious activity report. Then explain why the U.S. Treasury Department flagged multiple payments from our accounts to M. Trent Holdings LLC, an entity registered in Marcus's name in the Cayman Islands. The room erupted, board members shouting questions, Marcus on his feet, face red, Sharon frozen, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Lawrence Pemberton slammed his hand on the table. Quiet! Everyone sit down. Slowly, the room settled. Marcus and Sharon remained standing, trapped. Diane Wu looked at Ethan, her expression hard. How did you find this? Our auditors missed it. Our compliance team missed it. How did you catch it? Ethan turned to Maya. Because she caught it. Maya Lawson has been working as a cleaner on this floor for 2 years. And in that time, she observed patterns in our financial documents that no one else noticed. She identified the discrepancies. She traced the shell companies. She gave me the evidence I needed to expose this fraud. Every eye in the room turned to Maya. She sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. Lawrence Pemberton studied her for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice measured. Ms. Lawson, is what Mr. Rowe is saying true? Maya lifted her chin. Yes, sir. Every word. And you're a janitor? I'm a cleaner, sir. But I'm also... She paused, then met his gaze directly. I have a master's degree in forensic accounting from Northwestern University. The room went dead silent. Ethan turned to stare at her, shock rippling through him. What? Maya's voice was quiet but steady. I graduated top of my class 7 years ago. I worked for a Big Four accounting firm for 3 years. But after I reported my supervisor for embezzlement, I was blacklisted. No firm would hire me. So I took the only job I could find. Cleaning floors, watching, waiting for a chance to use my skills again. Ethan felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. This woman, this brilliant, extraordinary woman, had been invisible in his building for 2 years. And he'd never seen her. None of them had. Lawrence Pemberton leaned back in his chair, his expression grave. Marcus, Sharon, do you have anything to say? Marcus's face was ashen. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Sharon sank back into her chair, her hands trembling. I was trying to protect the company. Marcus told me, he said, save it, Lawrence said coldly. He looked at Ethan. Call security. I want them both escorted out of this building immediately and contact the FBI. This is a federal crime. Ethan nodded and picked up the phone. As security arrived and led Marcus and Sharon out of the boardroom, both of them pale, defeated, destroyed, Ethan looked at Maya. She was still sitting in her chair, her expression calm, as if she'd just finished mopping a floor instead of dismantling 2 careers and saving $1 billion company. Maya, Ethan said quietly, why didn't you tell me? She looked at him, her dark eyes steady. Would you have listened, Mr. Rowe? If I'd walked up to you 2 years ago and told you I had a master's degree in forensic accounting, would you have believed me? Or would you have seen a black woman in a cleaning uniform and assumed I was lying? Ethan had no answer. Because he knew the truth, he wouldn't have listened. He wouldn't have seen her. Until last night, when he'd had no choice. Maya stood and smoothed down her uniform. If there's nothing else, sir, I should get back to work. Wait, Ethan said. Please, don't go. She paused, looking at him. You saved this company, Ethan said. You saved me, and I want... He took a breath. I want to offer you a position. Head of Internal Audit. Full executive authority. Name your salary. Maya stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she shook her head. No, thank you, Mr. Rowe. Ethan's heart sank. Maya, I don't want to work for you, she said quietly. Not because you're not a good man, but because I've spent 2 years being invisible, and I'm done with that. She turned and walked toward the door, and Ethan Rowe realized with sudden crushing clarity that he was about to lose the most extraordinary person he'd ever met. Then let me invest in you, he said desperately. Maya stopped, her hand on the door handle. Whatever you want to do, Ethan continued. Start your own firm. Launch a consultancy. I'll back you. Full funding. No strings. Maya turned slowly, her expression unreadable. Why? Because you deserve it, Ethan said simply. And because I owe you everything. For the first time since he'd met her, Maya smiled. I'll think about it, Mr. Rowe. And then she was gone. 3 days passed before Ethan saw Maya again. In that time, the world of Rowe Industries had been turned upside down. The FBI launched a full investigation into Marcus Trent and Sharon Winters, freezing their assets and issuing warrants for their arrest. The media descended like vultures, headlines screaming about corporate fraud, betrayal at the highest levels, and the billionaire CEO who'd nearly lost everything. But the story that captured the most attention wasn't about Marcus or Sharon. It was about Maya. Mystery Maid saves billion-dollar company. Chicago Tribune. Janitor with master's degree exposes multi-million-dollar fraud. Wall Street Journal. The invisible woman who saw everything. Forbes. Ethan watched the coverage from his office, a strange mix of pride and guilt churning in his chest. Maya had spent 2 years in the shadows, her intelligence and education dismissed because of a uniform and a mop bucket. And now, the world knew her name. Now, everyone could see what he'd been too blind to notice. But Maya herself had vanished. She hadn't returned to work. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her apartment building's doorman told Ethan she wasn't accepting visitors. She'd made herself invisible again, but this time, by choice. On the 4th day, Ethan received a letter, hand-delivered to his office by courier, sealed in a plain white envelope with his name written in careful cursive on the front. He opened it with trembling hands. Mr. Rowe, thank you for your offer. After much consideration, I've decided to accept, but not in the way you proposed. I don't want your investment. I don't need your money. What I need is something far more valuable, your platform. For 2 years, I watched brilliant people, cleaners, security guards, cafeteria workers, move through your building like ghosts. People with degrees and skills and dreams who couldn't get anyone to see them because of their job titles, their skin color, their accents, or their zip codes. I want to build something for them. A consulting firm that hires the overlooked. A company that recognizes talent wherever it exists, not just in corner offices and Ivy League networks. If you're serious about making this right, I need 3 things. 1. Access to your professional network. Introduce me to CEOs, board members, investors who need forensic accounting, compliance auditing, and fraud detection. I'll prove my firm can deliver results that rival any Big 4 company. 2. Your first contract. Hire us to overhaul Rowe Industries' internal controls and build a fraud prevention system that actually works. Pay us what you'd pay any elite consulting firm. No charity, no special treatment. We earn our reputation the hard way. 3. Your voice. When people ask you how you survived this crisis, tell them the truth. A woman in a cleaning uniform saved your company because she was brilliant and you were smart enough to listen. Use your platform to challenge how the business world defines talent and qualifications. If you agree to these terms, meet me at Millennium Park tomorrow at 2 p.m., the Cloud Gate. Come alone. If you don't agree, I understand. But I won't accept anything less than this. Respectfully, Maya Lawson, founder, Apex Integrity Consulting. Ethan read the letter 3 times, each pass filling him with a deeper sense of awe. She wasn't asking for a handout. She wasn't asking to be rescued. She was demanding a partnership, on her terms, with her dignity intact. She was magnificent. The next afternoon, Ethan walked through Millennium Park under a pale November sky. The tourists were sparse this time of year, just a few scattered groups taking photos near the massive reflective sculpture known as Cloud Gate, the Bean, to locals. Maya was standing beneath it, her reflection warped and multiplied in the polished steel surface. She was wearing a charcoal blazer and dark jeans, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked different out of the uniform, confident, self-possessed, like someone who'd finally stepped into the light. Ethan approached slowly. "Hi." Maya turned, her expression neutral. "Mr. Rowe." "Ethan," he corrected gently. "Please. After everything we've been through, I think you can call me Ethan." A small smile touched her lips. "Ethan, then." They stood there for a moment, the city humming around them, distant traffic, the rustle of dying leaves, the echo of voices across the park. "I read your letter," Ethan said. "Multiple times, actually. And you're asking me to put my reputation on the line for a company that doesn't exist yet, run by someone the business world still sees as a janitor who got lucky." He paused. "Do you have any idea how much pushback I'm going to get from my board?" Maya's jaw tightened slightly, but she held his gaze. "Then my answer is no. I'm not interested in being your charity case or your diversity initiative. If you don't believe in what I'm building—" "I believe in you," Ethan interrupted. "Completely. But I need you to understand what you're walking into. The business world is vicious. They're going to scrutinize everything you do. They're going to look for reasons to dismiss you, to say you only succeeded because of me. Are you ready for that?" Maya's eyes flashed. "I've been dismissed my entire career, Ethan. By professors who assumed I only got into Northwestern because of affirmative action. By colleagues who mistook me for the secretary. By supervisors who buried my fraud report because it was inconvenient. I've been ready for this my whole life." Ethan nodded slowly. "Okay, then here's my answer. Yes, to all three conditions. You'll have my network, my first contract, and my voice. But I want something from you in return." Maya's expression became guarded. "What?" "Let me be your first employee." She blinked. "What?" "Not full-time," Ethan clarified quickly. "I still have a company to run, but let me work with you. Advisor, consultant, part-time analyst. I don't care about the title. I just want to be part of what you're building. Because watching you work these past few days, watching you think, strategize, see patterns no one else sees, it reminded me why I fell in love with business in the first place." Maya stared at him, surprise flickering across her face. "You want to work for me?" "With you," Ethan corrected. "I spent 10 years building an empire and nearly lost everything because I stopped paying attention to the people who actually make companies run. You see them. You value them. You understand that talent doesn't come with a pedigree. It comes with hunger and heart and the willingness to fight for it. That's the kind of company I want to be part of." Maya was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. "You're serious?" "Completely." She turned away, looking at her fractured reflection in the sculpture's surface. "Why, Ethan? Really? Why does this matter so much to you?" Ethan took a breath. "Because for the past 3 days I've been reading articles about the mystery maid who saved my company. And every single one of them treats you like some kind of miraculous anomaly. Like you're the exception that proves the rule. But you're not an exception, Maya. You're proof that we've been doing this wrong the whole time. That we've been looking for talent in all the wrong places, hiring from the same schools and networks, promoting the same types of people. And meanwhile, brilliant minds like yours have been emptying our trash cans because we were too stupid to look." His voice grew quieter, more intense. "I can't undo the 2 years you spent invisible in my building. But I can help you build something that makes sure no one else has to go through what you did. That's worth more to me than anything I've ever built." Maya turned back to him, her eyes bright. For a moment, Ethan thought she might cry, but instead she extended her hand. "Partners, then," she said. Ethan took her hand, feeling the firmness of her grip, the calluses on her palm from 2 years of manual labor. Partners. They shook, and in that moment, Ethan felt something shift. A new chapter beginning, built not on ego or ambition, but on mutual respect and shared purpose. Maya released his hand and pulled a folder from her bag. "I've been working on a business plan. I want your honest feedback before we move forward." Ethan took the folder and flipped it open. The first page was a mission statement, typed in clean, precise font. "Apex integrity consulting talent is everywhere. Opportunity is not. We find the brilliant minds the world overlooks and give them the platform they deserve." Beneath it was a detailed operational plan. Target clients, service offerings, hiring criteria, revenue projections. It was professional, thorough, and ambitious. A 5-year roadmap to building a firm that could rival the established giants. But what struck Ethan most was the hiring section. Maya wasn't planning to recruit from top business schools or poach talent from competitors. She was targeting community colleges, second-chance programs, workers with unconventional backgrounds. She was building a company designed to find people like herself, people the system had failed. "This is extraordinary," Ethan said quietly. But it's going to be hard. You're going against every convention in the industry. Good, Maya said firmly. The conventions are broken. Someone needs to prove there's a better way. Ethan looked at her. This woman who'd been invisible for so long and was now ready to reshape an entire industry. When do we start? Maya smiled. Monday. I've already secured office space, small but functional, and I've reached out to 3 people I worked with at the cleaning company. All of them have degrees they've never been able to use. They're ready to join if we can offer competitive salaries. We can, Ethan said immediately. Send me the numbers. I'll make sure you're funded for at least the first year. Maya shook her head. No, we take out a business loan like everyone else. If this company is going to succeed, it needs to stand on its own merit from day one. No shortcuts, no special treatment. Ethan wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in her eyes. This mattered to her, proving that she could build something real without riding on his name or his money. Okay, he said. We do it your way. But when you land your first contract with Rowe Industries, I expect a proper invoice. Market rate, non-negotiable. Maya's smile widened. Deal. They walked together through the park, discussing logistics, timelines, challenges. Ethan felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. The excitement of building something meaningful, something that mattered beyond profit margins and shareholder returns. As they reached the park's edge, Maya stopped and turned to him. Ethan, can I ask you something? Anything. That night in the conference room when I first showed you the discrepancies, why did you listen? You could have dismissed me. Most people in your position would have, but you didn't. Why? Ethan considered the question. Honestly, desperation. I was out of options and you were offering answers. But also, he paused, searching for the right words. There was something in your eyes when you looked at those numbers. Recognition, understanding, like you were seeing an old friend. I've worked with enough analysts to know that look. It's the look of someone who really knows what they're doing, so I took a chance. Maya nodded slowly. I'm glad you did. So am I. They exchanged phone numbers and email addresses. Professional now. Partners in an unlikely venture. As Maya turned to leave, Ethan called after her. Maya? She looked back. Thank you, he said simply, for giving me a second chance to do this right. Maya's expression softened. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. And then she was gone, disappearing into the Chicago afternoon, ready to build something the world had never seen before. Ethan stood there for a moment, watching the space where she'd been. Then he pulled out his phone and sent a message to his assistant. Clear my calendar for Monday afternoon. I have a new client meeting. Apex Integrity Consulting. Treat them like Goldman Sachs. The response came back immediately. Done. Anything else? Ethan smiled. Yeah, draft a press release. Title it, Why the Future of Business Belongs to People We've Been Ignoring. Send it to every major outlet. He pocketed his phone and walked back toward his office, the late afternoon sun breaking through the November clouds. For the first time in years, Ethan Rowe felt like he was building something that mattered, and it had all started with a woman in a cleaning uniform who refused to stay invisible. 6 months later, Maya stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of Apex Integrity Consulting's new office on West Madison Street. The space was modest, just 2,500 square feet on the 22nd floor, but it was theirs. Earned through contracts won, clients impressed, and skeptics proven wrong. The morning sun cast long shadows across the open workspace where her team of 7 sat hunched over laptops, analyzing financial data for their latest client, a mid-sized pharmaceutical company that had hired them after Rowe Industries publicly endorsed their work. Maya's reflection stared back at her from the glass, a woman in a tailored burgundy blazer and cream blouse, her natural hair styled in elegant twists. She barely recognized herself sometimes, not because she'd changed, but because the world finally saw her the way she'd always seen herself. Maya, you've got to see this. She turned to find James Chen approaching, his tablet extended. James had been a security guard at a downtown hotel before Maya recruited him. He had a degree in computer forensics from DePaul University, but had been unable to land a job in his field after a minor conviction for marijuana possession derailed his career before it started. Now he was Apex's lead digital forensics analyst. What am I looking at? Maya asked, studying the screen. Rodale Financial Group. They're one of the biggest investment firms in the Midwest. Their CFO just emailed us directly. They want to meet about a comprehensive fraud audit. James's eyes were bright with excitement. This could be huge, Maya. If we land this, it puts us in a completely different league. Maya took the tablet and read the email carefully. Rodale Financial was exactly the kind of client that could legitimize Apex beyond the skeptics who still whispered that they were just Ethan Rowe's pet project. A company that size wouldn't hire them out of charity. They'd hire them because they believed Apex could deliver results. "Set up a meeting," Maya said, "but make sure the whole team is prepared. They're going to test us. Hard." James nodded and headed back to his desk. Maya watched him go, pride swelling in her chest. This was what she'd envisioned. Brilliant people getting the opportunities they deserved, proving that talent had nothing to do with pedigree and everything to do with hunger. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Board meeting today. They're going to love the Q2 numbers. Your fraud prevention system just saved us another $400K. Drinks tonight to celebrate?" Maya smiled and typed back, "Can't. Preparing for Rodale pitch. Rain check?" 3 dots appeared immediately. "Rodale, that's massive. Need any backup?" Maya hesitated. Ethan had been true to his word over the past 6 months, providing connections, endorsements, and strategic advice without ever trying to control her vision. He showed up to Apex's office once a week, rolling up his sleeves to analyze data alongside her team, asking questions, learning their processes. He never pulled rank or acted like he was doing them a favor. He just worked, and somewhere along the way their partnership had evolved into something deeper, something that made Maya's heart beat a little faster when he walked into a room. She shook her head, clearing the thought. This wasn't the time for complications. "We've got this," she typed. "But thank you. For everything." His response was immediate. "Proud of you, Maya, seriously." Maya pocketed her phone and turned back to the windows, her mind already shifting to strategy. Rodale would want proof that Apex could handle enterprise-level complexity. They'd want case studies, methodologies, evidence that a 7-person firm could deliver what the Big Four charged millions for. She had all of that, but she also knew the real challenge wasn't technical. It was psychological. Rodale's executives would walk into that pitch expecting to see an underdog story, a feel-good narrative about second chances. Maya needed to make them forget that narrative within the first 5 minutes and focus solely on results. "Maya?" She turned to find Keisha Williams standing behind her. Keisha had been a cafeteria worker at a law firm before Maya recruited her. She had a master's in statistics from the University of Illinois, but had been unable to break into the corporate world after being laid off during the 2008 recession, and spending years working multiple service jobs to support her family. Now she was Apex's senior data analyst, and her predictive modeling had already caught 2 attempted frauds for their clients. "The Rodale brief is ready for your review," Keisha said, handing over a thick binder. "I included the comparative analysis you requested, our detection rates versus the industry standard. We're outperforming by 37%. Maya took the binder, flipping through the pages. The work was impeccable. Clean data visualization, rigorous methodology, conclusions backed by hard evidence. This was the ammunition they needed. "This is excellent, Keisha, thank you." Keisha smiled, but there was hesitation in her eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. What if they don't take us seriously? What if they think—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "What if they think we're just a publicity stunt? That we only exist because Ethan Rowe needed good PR after the scandal?" Maya set the binder down and met Keisha's gaze directly. "Then we prove them wrong. We've been doing that for 6 months and we'll keep doing it for as long as it takes. Eventually the work speaks for itself, and when it does, nobody can take that away from us." Keisha nodded, but the uncertainty didn't completely leave her face. Maya understood. They were all carrying the weight of being firsts, first in their families to build something like this, first to be taken seriously in rooms that had always dismissed them. The pressure was immense. "Listen," Maya said, her voice gentle but firm. "I spent 2 years cleaning floors while people with half my education made decisions about million-dollar budgets. I know what it's like to be underestimated, but I also know what it's like to prove people wrong. And trust me, that feeling never gets old." Keisha's smile returned stronger this time. "Okay, I'm ready." "Good, because we're about to show Rodale exactly what this team can do." The meeting with Rodale Financial Group was scheduled for Thursday afternoon at their headquarters, a gleaming skyscraper in the Loop with marble lobbies and executives who wore watches worth more than most people's annual salaries. Maya arrived with James and Keisha, all 3 of them dressed impeccably, carrying tablets loaded with presentations and case studies. As they rode the elevator to the 35th floor, Maya could feel the nervous energy radiating from her team. "Remember," she said quietly, "we belong here. Not because anyone gave us permission, but because we earned it. Walk in there like you own the room." The elevator doors opened and they stepped into a reception area that screamed old money. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture, abstract art that probably cost 6 figures. The receptionist looked up, her expression polite but cool. "You must be from Apex Integrity. Mr. Harrison is expecting you. Conference room B." They were led down a hallway lined with photographs of Rodale's history. 80 years of financial management, generations of wealth preservation, partnerships with Fortune 500 companies. It was intimidating by design. Conference room B was massive, with a table that could seat 20. At the head sat 3 executives: Gerald Harrison, the CFO, Patricia Knowles, the head of compliance, and Marcus Reeves, the VP of operations. Gerald Harrison was in his early 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. He stood and extended his hand as Maya entered. "Ms. Lawson, thank you for coming." "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Harrison," Maya said, shaking his hand with a firm grip. She introduced James and Keisha, and they all took seats across from the Rodale executives. Patricia Knowles leaned forward, her expression skeptical. "I'll be honest, Ms. Lawson, when your name came across my desk, I was intrigued. Your story is remarkable, truly, but this meeting is about capability, not narrative. Can you walk us through why Rodale should trust a 6-month-old firm with our fraud detection when we have relationships with established auditing companies?" Maya had expected this. She opened her tablet and projected a slide onto the screen at the far end of the room. "Because established firms are looking in the wrong places," Maya said calmly. "Traditional auditing focuses on historical data, reviewing what's already happened, checking boxes for compliance. We focus on patterns, behaviors, and anomalies in real time. We don't just tell you where the fraud happened. We predict where it's about to happen." She clicked to the next slide, showing a case study from their work with Rowe Industries. 6 months ago, we implemented a predictive monitoring system for our first client. Within 3 weeks, we identified an attempted embezzlement scheme that their previous auditors had missed for 18 months. Total savings: $1, $2 million. Marcus Reeves crossed his arms. "Impressive, but Rowe Industries is a tech company. We're a financial services firm. The complexity is exponentially higher, which is exactly why traditional methods don't work." Keisha interjected, her voice steady. "Financial services generate massive transaction volumes with complex layering. That's where our statistical modeling excels. We use machine learning algorithms to detect micro-deviations that human auditors can't catch, patterns that emerge over thousands of transactions." She pulled up a visualization on the screen, a network graph showing transaction flows, with red nodes highlighting anomalies. "This is from a test analysis we ran on publicly available data from a financial firm similar to yours. These red nodes represent transactions that fell outside normal behavioral parameters. 3 of them turned out to be confirmed cases of fraud that went undetected for years." Gerald Harrison leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued. "How long did it take you to build that analysis?" 48 hours, James said, "and that was working with incomplete data. With full access to your systems, we could have a comprehensive risk assessment ready within 2 weeks." Patricia Knowles' skepticism was beginning to crack. "And your fee structure?" Maya had prepared for this too. "Our rates are 30% below Big Four pricing. Not because our work is worth less, but because our overhead is lower. We don't have expensive downtown offices or bloated administrative costs. We invest in talent and technology, the things that actually deliver results." She clicked to the final slide, a proposed engagement outline with deliverables, timelines, and pricing. "This is what we're offering: a complete fraud risk assessment, implementation of real-time monitoring systems, and quarterly reviews for the first year. If we don't identify at least one significant vulnerability within 90 days, you don't pay us." The room went quiet. Gerald Harrison exchanged glances with his colleagues, a silent conversation happening between them. Finally, he spoke. "That's a bold guarantee, Ms. Lawson." "It's a confident one," Maya corrected, "because we know what we're capable of. And we know that your current systems have gaps, they always do. The question is whether you want to find those gaps before someone exploits them, or after." Patricia Knowles smiled slightly, the first crack in her professional armor. "You don't pull punches, do you?" "No, ma'am," Maya said. "I spent too many years being polite and invisible. It didn't get me very far." Gerald Harrison laughed, a genuine surprised sound. He stood and extended his hand again. "I like you, Ms. Lawson. You've got nerve. Give us 48 hours to discuss internally. We'll be in touch by Monday. Maya shook his hand, keeping her expression neutral even as relief flooded through her. Thank you for your time, Mr. Harrison. We look forward to hearing from you. As they rode the elevator back down, James let out a long exhale. That was intense. You both were perfect, Maya said, pride evident in her voice. Professional, confident, prepared. Exactly what we needed. Keisha looked at her. Do you think we got it? Maya considered the question. I think we gave them something to think about. Now we wait. But deep down, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Certainty. They'd walked into that room as underdogs and walked out as equals. Not because of Ethan's name or a feel-good story, but because their work was undeniable. That evening, Maya returned to the office to find Ethan waiting in the lobby, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Heard the pitch went well, he said, offering her one of the cups. Maya took it, warmth spreading through her chest. From the coffee or his presence, she wasn't entirely sure. How did you hear that already? Ethan grinned. Gerald Harrison called me. Wanted to know if you were really as good as you seemed or if it was all presentation skills. Maya's heart sank slightly. And what did you tell him? I told him the truth, Ethan said simply. That you're the most brilliant person I've ever worked with. That your team is solving problems my million-dollar consultants couldn't touch. And that if Rodale doesn't hire you, they're making the biggest mistake of their fiscal year. Maya stared at him, emotion tightening her throat. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Ethan said quietly. Because it's true, and because you deserve to have people fight for you the way you've been fighting for everyone else. They stood there in the empty lobby, the city lights glowing through the windows, the weight of 6 months of partnership and mutual respect hanging between them. Ethan, Maya said softly, thank you. For everything, for believing in this, for believing in me. He stepped closer, his expression serious. Maya, I need to tell you something. Her pulse quickened. What? This partnership, working with you, building Apex, watching you create something extraordinary. It's been the most meaningful thing I've done in my entire career. He paused, searching for words. But somewhere along the way, it became more than just business for me. Maya's breath caught. Ethan, I know, he said quickly. I know this complicates things. I know we're partners and mixing personal feelings with business is risky, but I couldn't keep pretending I don't feel this. And I needed you to know. Maya set down her coffee cup, her mind racing. She'd felt it too. The pull, the connection, the way every conversation with him felt like coming home. But she'd buried it, convinced herself it was gratitude or admiration or anything other than what it actually was. I feel it too, she whispered. Ethan's eyes widened. You do? Yes. But I'm scared, Ethan. I've worked so hard to build something real, something that stands on its own. And if this becomes something, people will say I only succeeded because of our relationship. They'll dismiss everything I've built. Ethan reached out and gently took her hand. Then we'll prove them wrong. Together. The same way we've been proving them wrong about everything else. Maya looked down at their joined hands, feeling the calluses on his palm that had developed over months of working alongside her team. He wasn't the arrogant billionaire she'd watched from the shadows 2 years ago. He'd become someone different, someone better, someone she could trust. Okay, she said, finally meeting his eyes. But we do this right. No shortcuts, no special treatment. If this relationship is going to work, it has to be built on the same principles as everything else. Honesty, respect, and equal partnership. Ethan smiled, the kind of smile that transformed his entire face. I wouldn't want it any other way. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Maya didn't pull away. She closed the distance between them, and when their lips met, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Like 2 people who'd been invisible to each other finally learning to see. 1 year later, Maya stood at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Palmer House Hilton, looking out at an audience of 300 business leaders, executives, and journalists. The annual Chicago Business Excellence Awards ceremony was in full swing, crystal chandeliers glittering overhead, the hum of conversation filling the ornate space decorated in gold and crimson. Maya wore a midnight blue evening gown, her hair swept up in an elegant updo. On her left hand, a simple platinum band caught the light, a ring Ethan had given her 6 months ago on a quiet evening in her office, with no fanfare, just a question and a promise. She glanced to the side of the stage where Ethan stood with her team, James, Keisha, and the 12 other brilliant minds they'd recruited over the past year. Apex Integrity Consulting now occupied an entire floor in a building on Wacker Drive. They had 17 active clients, including Rodale Financial, and a waiting list that stretched into the next fiscal quarter. But tonight wasn't about business metrics. Tonight was about something bigger. The moderator, Rebecca Chung from the Chicago Tribune, smiled at Maya from her seat on the stage. Ms. Lawson, Apex Integrity Consulting has grown from a 7-person startup to one of the most sought-after fraud detection firms in the Midwest in just 18 months. What would you say is the key to that success? Maya took a breath, her voice steady and clear. The key is recognizing that talent exists everywhere, not just in the places we've traditionally looked. Every person on my team has a story of being overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated by the conventional corporate world. But they're not exceptions. They're proof that we've been building our companies wrong, hiring from the same narrow pool of candidates while ignoring brilliant minds, simply because they didn't follow the expected path. She paused, letting the words settle over the audience. Our success isn't just about solving fraud. It's about challenging the industry to rethink what qualifications actually mean. A degree from an Ivy League school doesn't make you smarter than someone who earned their education at a community college while working 2 jobs. A gap in your resume doesn't mean you lack dedication. It might mean you were caring for a sick parent or rebuilding your life after a setback. We look at the whole person, not just the credentials, and that's made all the difference. The audience erupted in applause. Maya caught Ethan's eye across the room and he mouthed 2 words. "I'm proud." Rebecca leaned forward. "Your story has resonated with millions of people. The maid who became a CEO. But you've been vocal about pushing back against that narrative. Why?" Maya's expression grew serious. "Because calling me the maid who became a CEO suggests I transformed from something less valuable into something more valuable. But I was always valuable. I always had a master's degree in forensic accounting. I always had the skills and intelligence to do this work. What changed wasn't me. It was who was paying attention." She looked directly at the audience, her voice gaining strength. There are thousands of Maya Lawsons out there right now, working as janitors, security guards, delivery drivers, retail clerks, people with degrees and skills and dreams who can't get anyone to see past their current circumstances. My story isn't special. It's the indictment of a system that wastes human potential because we're too lazy or too biased to look beyond the surface. The applause this time was thunderous. Maya saw several executives in the audience shifting uncomfortably, but others were nodding, their expressions thoughtful. Rebecca smiled. "Strong words. Have you faced backlash for being so direct?" "Absolutely," Maya said without hesitation. "I've been called aggressive, ungrateful, too political. I've had potential clients tell me they prefer to work with firms that are less controversial. But I'm not interested in being palatable. I'm interested in being honest. And the truth is, the business world has been leaving money and talent on the table for decades because we've confused exclusivity with excellence." She gestured toward her team at the edge of the stage. "These 15 people have saved our clients over $8 million in fraud losses in 18 months. 8 million. And not one of them would have been hired by a traditional Big Four firm. Not because they aren't brilliant, but because they didn't fit the mold. That's not a success story, that's a failure of imagination by everyone who passed them over." The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Rebecca glanced at her notes. "Let's talk about your partnership with Ethan Rowe. There's been speculation about the nature of your relationship, both professional and personal. Some critics have suggested that Apex's success is primarily due to his connections and influence. How do you respond to that?" Maya had been expecting this question. She'd been asked it in a dozen different interviews, always with the same underlying implication, that she hadn't really earned her success. "Ethan Rowe opened doors that would have stayed closed without him," Maya said calmly. "That's a fact. His endorsement gave us credibility we wouldn't have had otherwise. But here's what those critics conveniently ignore. We had to perform once we walked through those doors. Ethan's name got us meetings with Rodale Financial, Midwest Banking Group, and Tribune Holdings. But our work is what got us the contracts. Our results are what got us the renewals. Our team is what earned the reputation we have now." She paused, her voice softening slightly. "As for our personal relationship, yes, Ethan and I are engaged. Yes, that complicates the narrative for people who want to dismiss my achievements. But the truth is, Ethan has been my partner in every sense of the word. He's challenged me, supported me, and learned from me the same way I've learned from him. He didn't rescue me. We built something together. And anyone who can't see the difference isn't paying attention." Ethan was smiling now, his eyes bright with emotion. Maya felt her heart swell, grateful for this man who'd seen her when she was invisible and stood beside her as she became undeniable. Rebecca nodded, clearly impressed. One final question, Ms. Lawson. What's next for Apex Integrity Consulting? Maya took a breath, steadying herself for what she was about to announce. We're launching the Apex Fellowship Program, a fully funded initiative that will identify 50 individuals each year, people working in service industries, people with non-traditional backgrounds, people who've been overlooked by conventional hiring processes, and train them in forensic accounting, compliance auditing, and fraud detection. We'll provide education, certification, mentorship, and guaranteed job placement either at Apex or with our partner companies. The audience buzzed with surprise. This wasn't public knowledge yet. Maya had wanted to announce it here, in front of the people who could make it succeed or fail. The fellowship is being funded by Apex's profits and a $10 million commitment from the Rowe Foundation, Maya continued. Our goal is to fundamentally change the pipeline of talent in this industry, not by lowering standards, but by raising our awareness of where true excellence actually exists. She looked out at the audience, her voice ringing with conviction. I was lucky. I happened to be in the right place at the right moment when someone finally noticed me. But luck shouldn't be the determining factor in whether brilliant people get opportunities. So we're building a system where it doesn't have to be, where talent is recognized regardless of where it comes from, where the next Maya Lawson doesn't have to spend 2 years invisible before someone takes her seriously. The applause was deafening. People rose to their feet. First a few, then dozens, then the entire ballroom standing and clapping as Maya stood at the podium, overwhelmed by the response. When the applause finally died down, Rebecca stood and shook Maya's hand. Ladies and gentlemen, Maya Lawson, CEO of Apex Integrity Consulting and this year's recipient of the Emerging Leader Award. Maya left the stage and was immediately surrounded by her team, everyone hugging and congratulating each other. James was grinning ear to ear. Keisha had tears streaming down her face. The newest members of the team, people Maya had recruited from hotels, hospitals, and office buildings across Chicago, looked stunned and proud. And then Ethan was there, wrapping his arms around her, his voice low in her ear. You were magnificent. Maya pulled back to look at him. We were magnificent. This doesn't happen without you. No, Ethan said firmly. This happens because of you. I just had the privilege of watching. They were interrupted by a woman in her 50s approaching, Eleanor Richmond, CEO of one of Chicago's largest investment firms. Maya recognized her from the business journals. Ms. Lawson, Eleanor said, extending her hand. That was the most powerful speech I've heard at one of these events in 30 years. I want to talk to you about bringing the Apex Fellowship to our firm. We have over 2,000 employees, and I suspect we've been making the exact mistakes you described. Maya shook her hand, her mind already racing with possibilities. I'd be honored to discuss that, Ms. Richmond. Call me Eleanor, and please, she handed Maya a business card. Let's set something up for next week. I think we have a lot to talk about. As Eleanor walked away, 3 more executives approached with similar requests. Then a journalist from Bloomberg, then a venture capitalist interested in funding expansion. Within 20 minutes, Maya had collected a dozen business cards and fielded half a dozen partnership proposals. Ethan watched with barely concealed pride. You're going to need a bigger team. Maya laughed, the sound bright and genuine. We're working on it. Later that night, after the ceremony had ended and the crowd had dispersed, Maya and Ethan stood alone on the hotel's rooftop terrace. The Chicago skyline stretched out before them, millions of lights twinkling in the November darkness, the distant sound of traffic humming below. Maya leaned against the railing, Ethan's arm around her waist, both of them wrapped in coats against the cold. Can you believe this? Maya said softly. 2 years ago, I was cleaning that conference room where we met. And now, she gestured at the city below them. Now I'm standing here announcing a fellowship program that's going to change people's lives. I can believe it, Ethan said, because I watched you build it, step by step, contract by contract, proving everyone wrong who said it couldn't be done. Maya turned to face him, her eyes searching his. Do you ever regret it? Walking away from the person you used to be? The ruthless CEO who didn't care about anyone but himself? Ethan considered the question seriously. No, that version of me built an empire. But it was hollow. I was respected but not trusted, feared but not admired. I had everything except the things that actually mattered. He cupped her face gently. You didn't just save my company, Maya. You saved me from becoming someone I would have hated. You would have figured it out eventually, Maya said. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to. I'm glad it was you. They kissed, the city lights blurring around them, the cold wind forgotten. When they finally pulled apart, Maya rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. What are you thinking? Ethan asked. Maya smiled. I'm thinking about all the people out there right now who feel invisible, who think they don't matter because nobody's paying attention to them. I'm thinking about how the Apex Fellowship is going to find them, how we're going to prove that brilliance isn't rare, it's just overlooked. She lifted her head to look at him. And I'm thinking about how grateful I am that you looked. That night in the conference room when you could have dismissed me, you looked. You saw me. And that changed everything. Ethan's expression grew serious. I saw you, Maya, but you're the one who refused to stay invisible. You're the one who stepped forward when it would have been safer to stay quiet. You're the one who built something extraordinary from nothing. All I did was get out of your way and try to keep up. Maya laughed softly. You did more than that. You stood beside me when people said I was crazy. You vouched for me when I had no credibility. You treated me like an equal when the world saw me as less than. That matters, Ethan. More than you know. Then we saved each other, Ethan said simply. And we're going to spend the rest of our lives proving that everyone else can do the same thing. That talent and dignity and respect aren't luxuries, they're rights. And anyone who doesn't see that is going to have to answer to us. Maya grinned. I like the sound of that. They stood there for a long time, looking out at the city they were slowly changing. One contract, one hire, one opportunity at a time. In that moment, Maya thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago. Invisible, exhausted, brilliant but unseen. And she thought about the woman she was now. Visible, powerful, building a legacy that would outlast any single success or failure. The journey from that conference room to this rooftop terrace hadn't been easy. There had been doubt, pushback, moments when Maya questioned whether she was strong enough to keep fighting. But she had fought, and she had won, not because someone gave her permission, but because she gave it to herself. And now she was using that power to open doors for everyone who came after her. Every person working a job that made them invisible. Every brilliant mind dismissed because they didn't fit the mold. Every dreamer who'd been told they didn't belong. They belonged. They always had. It had just taken someone willing to look past the uniform to see it. Maya squeezed Ethan's hand. Ready to go home? Always, he said. With you, always. They walked back inside together, partners in every sense of the word, ready to face whatever came next. Because the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And for the thousands of people the Apex Fellowship would reach, for the companies that would learn to see talent in new places, for the industry that would slowly, grudgingly, begin to change, the best was yet to come. 5 years later, Maya stood in the lobby of Apex Integrity Consulting's new headquarters, a full building in downtown Chicago, 30 floors of glass and steel with the company logo etched prominently above the entrance. The Apex Fellowship program had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. Over 300 people had graduated, finding careers not just at Apex but at companies across the country that had finally learned to look beyond traditional pipelines. The success stories were everywhere. A former hotel housekeeper now leading fraud detection at a major bank. A parking garage attendant who'd become a compliance director. A retail worker who'd revolutionized risk assessment for a Fortune 500 company. Maya walked past the wall of founders, photographs of every fellowship graduate, their stories engraved on bronze plaques. Each face represented a life transformed, a talent finally recognized, a person who'd refused to stay invisible. She took the elevator to the top floor where Ethan was waiting in their shared office, a space they'd designed together, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city they'd helped change. Ready? He asked, straightening his tie. Maya nodded, smoothing down her emerald green dress. Ready. They were heading to Northwestern University, where Maya would deliver the commencement address to the graduating class of the Kellogg School of Management. The shy woman who'd once cleaned floors in silence would now tell hundreds of future business leaders that success isn't about credentials. It's about courage, integrity, and the willingness to see value where others don't. As they walked to the elevator, Maya paused at her office window one last time, looking down at the street below. Somewhere in this city, someone brilliant was working a job that made them invisible. Someone with potential was being overlooked. Someone extraordinary was waiting for their chance. Maya smiled. thinking about the phone call she'd received that morning. A recommendation from one of their clients about a remarkable custodian at their office who'd noticed patterns in their supply chain logistics that could save millions. The interview was scheduled for next week. Because at Apex Integrity Consulting, they knew the truth. Talent isn't rare. It's everywhere. You just have to be willing to look. And Maya Lawson would spend the rest of her life making sure people did exactly that. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about the people around you, about talent and dignity and second chances, share it. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge, inspire, and remind us that extraordinary people are everywhere. We just have to be willing to see them. Because the next Maya Lawson might be right in front of you. You just have to look.